The boy sat at the dinner table, his small frame barely reaching the edge where the plates gleamed under the chandelier's soft glow. Around him, voices rose and fell in bursts of laughter, glasses clinking in celebration of nothing in particular, just another family gathering, another night where appearances mattered more than truth. His eyes, however, were not on the laughter or the food. They were locked onto the cake, the same chocolate cake he usually devoured with a wide grin. Tonight, though, it remained untouched. His hands were hidden beneath the table, pressed tightly against his thighs, his fists clenched so firmly that the knuckles strained pale beneath his skin. When his father noticed, he chuckled and raised his glass, his voice full of smug amusement. "He's just throwing a tantrum," he said to the others, brushing off the boy's silence as if it were a minor inconvenience. Across the table, the mother's eyes flashed sharply, cutting into the child with a single glance. "Don't make a scene," she hissed, her words quick and pointed, ensuring the boy stayed silent. The rest of the family carried on, their laughter swelling, drowning out the suffocating silence that clung to the child's shoulders. To them, nothing was wrong. The wine flowed, jokes spilled, and the world appeared perfect. But to the uncle, seated quietly in the corner, something was terribly out of place. He could feel it, like a storm buried beneath calm waters, a weight pressing down on the air that no one else seemed to notice. Later, when he rose from the table to fetch a glass of water, he realized the boy had slipped from his seat and was trailing behind him. The child's hesitant footsteps echoed faintly against the tiles of the long hallway. Turning, the uncle saw him standing there, eyes swollen, face pale, lips trembling. "Uncle," the boy whispered, his voice breaking into pieces. "Help me, please. Mom and Dad." His words faltered as he lifted his small hands into the dim light. The uncle froze. Bruises. Dark, ugly marks scattered where innocence should have been untouched. The sight of them clawed at his chest, not with tears, but with something colder, sharper, a fury he dared not unleash. Not yet. He swallowed hard, forcing himself to keep calm, to carry the weight of the secret back with him into the dining room, where laughter still rang. He sat again, but his thoughts no longer joined the conversation. The clinking glasses, the hollow laughter, the staged normality, all blurred into meaningless noise. His eyes, instead, burned holes into the figures across the table. The father with his arrogant smile, the mother with her shrill laughter. They looked untouchable, wrapped in the facade of a happy household. But in his ears, the boy's plea replayed again and again. "Help me, please." He watched the way the mother's fingers tightened around her glass, how the father leaned too close to her, whispering something that drew out a forced smile. To anyone else, it was marriage. To him, it was a language of cruelty, a private performance of a broken bond. And in that moment, clarity struck. This wasn't just discipline gone too far. It wasn't mere neglect. It was deeper, a betrayal that rotted from within. The boy didn't look like his father, not in the sharpness of the jaw, nor in the color of his eyes, nor in the shape of his frame. And the way the man treated him, dismissive, irritated, more like a burden than a son, only deepened the suspicion clawing at the uncle's mind. Infidelity. Lies. A secret life tightly stitched beneath the fabric of family dinners. The bruises were merely the visible scars. The real wound was buried in the truth the parents thought no one would ever discover. He said nothing that night. Instead, he smiled faintly, raised his glass as though nothing were wrong, and waited. Rule number 1. Never reveal your cards too early. In the weeks that followed, he became a quiet shadow in their lives. He watched more closely. He noticed the way the boy always hesitated before answering questions about home. He noticed the fatigue in his little shoulders, the silence in his laughter. And then came the teacher's words, offered so casually yet piercing like a blade. How strange, his father almost never comes. It's always his mother, or someone else. Someone else. That phrase was the spark he needed. He began to dig. At first, it was just a glance at call records, numbers that appeared too often at odd hours, saved under names that meant nothing. Then, deeper, text messages that seemed harmless until read at midnight, the words blurred by secrecy. The mother's sudden disappearances explained away by errands, The father's detached behavior toward the boy, the cracks widened with every discovery. Slowly, piece by piece, the web of lies began to form in his mind, each thread sticky with betrayal. The final confirmation came at the hospital. A routine visit, a conversation with the pediatrician. The uncle introduced himself as the child's relative, nothing unusual. But the hesitation in the doctor's eyes was telling. He glanced from the boy to the file, then back to the uncle, muttering, "Ah, I thought he was your brother," before changing the subject abruptly. That pause, that slip, it was enough. The uncle left the hospital knowing the truth was near. He arranged a DNA test, quietly, without anyone's knowledge. One night, while tucking the boy into bed, he gently gathered what he needed. To the child, it was just a playful request, another silly game with his uncle. To him, it was the final key to unlock the truth. The waiting was agony. Outwardly, he remained calm. Inwardly, his mind spun with fury and grief. He already knew the answer. Every instinct screamed it, but he needed proof. The envelope arrived on a quiet Wednesday morning. He sat at the kitchen table, the paper heavy in his hands. From upstairs came the faint sound of the boy's laughter, distant, fragile, a sound that carried both innocence and pain. He tore the envelope open, eyes skimming the sterile, technical words. Cold, detached, written without emotion. But their meaning was as sharp as a blade. The boy was not his father's son. The bloodline was broken. That night, he went to the house once more. Dinner was served, glasses raised, laughter echoing through the rooms. He sat patiently, his expression neutral, his heart a storm beneath the surface. When the plates were cleared and the toasts rang out, he slid the envelope across the table. The father picked it up first. His face froze, drained of all color. Silence fell, heavier than any before. The mother's hand darted out, snatching the papers, her voice faltering. "What is this?" she stammered, her fingers trembling. The uncle said nothing. The truth was its own weapon. The father's rage erupted like wildfire. His voice rose into screams, each word cracking with betrayal. He demanded answers, accusations spilling, fists pounding the table. The mother stammered, reaching for excuses that fell apart with every syllable. The uncle watched, detached, standing apart from the chaos. He had no stake in their war. He was only the messenger of the truth they had long buried. Their world collapsed before them, every fragile wall of their marriage crumbling in an instant. Finally, he stood. His voice was calm, unwavering. "I'm taking him with me." "You can't," the mother shrieked, her eyes wide with desperation. He met her gaze with a cold finality. "You lost that right the day you lied." The father said nothing. He did not protest. He only stared at her with venomous hatred, his silence the loudest answer of all. The uncle went upstairs and found the boy waiting, wide-eyed but silent. He lifted him gently into his arms. The child's small hand clutched his own, seeking comfort, trust, safety. There were no questions, no words needed. The boy knew. Downstairs, the storm raged on. Shouts, the shattering of glass, the sound of lives unraveling. But none of it touched them. For the uncle, the war was already over. He had won, not by force, but by truth. Later that night, in the safety of his own home, the boy slept soundly for the first time in weeks. The uncle sat alone in the darkness, the weight of everything pressing down upon him. There were no tears, no joy, no relief. Only clarity. The truth had been poisoned in their marriage long before he revealed it. He had not created their downfall. He had only pulled the cork from the bottle. Now, they would destroy themselves, slowly, piece by piece. And the boy, innocent, broken, yet resilient, would grow in peace, far from the shadows of deceit. In that house, he would never again hide his hands in shame. His voice would never tremble with fear. He would be safe, free, whole. Betrayal always leaves victims. But sometimes, if you wait long enough, it devours only the guilty. The uncle poured himself a glass of water, leaned back in the silence, and for the first time in years, he felt nothing. And that nothing was enough. And if this story struck you, if it held you until the last word, then don't just let it fade away. Stay, listen to more, because there are stories out there, of betrayal, of survival, of truth, that deserve to be told. Your support keeps these voices alive.